2012 Spec Book Division 3. Section 301 Subbase. There were no significant changes to this section. Section 302 Aggregate Base Course. The title of this section did change slightly. In the construction subsection, two new items, name and type of aggregate approval, were added to the requirements on the load ticket. For situations where the aggregate base course is not being paid for by weight, written documentation is now allowed in place of load tickets. Lastly, compaction requirements were added for layer thicknesses of 3 inches or less. Section 303 Open Graded Drainage Courses. This section has been moved into a frequently used special provision. It is anticipated that the specifications will be reincorporated in a future book. Section 304 Rubbleizing Portland Cement Concrete Pavement. The significant changes to this section will be discussed on the following slides. This section was replaced entirely with the frequently used special provision of the same name. The frequently used special provision had the following changes from the 2003 book. In the subsection on quality control checks, an option for using mechanical means for checking the quality of rubbleization was added. In addition, details about conducting hand excavations were added. In the subsection on compaction, the sequence of rollers was changed. In the miscellaneous subsection, the requirement to rubbleize 18 inches beyond lane lines was replaced with the option to saw cut the tie bars or rubbleize beyond the limits of the tie bars. Maximum particle sizes in the acceptance criteria subsection were increased to 6 inches above the reinforcement and 10 inches below the reinforcement or in non-reinforced pavements. The steel, hand pick, and water pay items were deleted from the measurement and payment subsection. In addition, the filler aggregate pay item was changed to a weight basis, and the cost of cutting tie bars is included in the saw cut rubbleize pay item. Section 305 HMA Base Crushing and Shaping. There were no significant changes to this section. Section 306 Aggregate Surface Course. The significant changes to this section will be discussed on the following slides. In the Materials subsection, 21A was added as an option for aggregate surface course, which will later be surfaced. 21A and 21AA were added as options for temporary maintenance gravel. For the placing and compacting subsection, name and type of aggregate approval were added to the requirements on the load ticket. For situations where the aggregate surface course is not being paid for by weight, written documentation is now allowed in place of load tickets. Layer thickness, compaction, and moisture content requirements were added as well. The maximum lift thickness is 6 inches. The compaction is a minimum of 95% unless it is to receive an HMA surface, in which case it is 98%. A tolerance of plus or minus 1/2 inch to the crown and grade shown on the plans was added for the finished surface. Lastly, compaction requirements were added for layer thicknesses of 3 inches or less. Section 307 Aggregate Shoulders and Approaches. The significant changes to this section will be discussed on the following slides. In the material subsection, a category was added for Class 1 shoulders and approaches that will later be surfaced. 21A, 21AA, and 22A will be allowed for this new category. In the trenching subsection, a new requirement of 98% density was added for trenches that will be surfaced. In subsection 307.03b, constructing shoulders and approaches, two new items, name and type of aggregate approval, were added to the requirements on the load ticket. For situations where the aggregate base course is not being paid for by weight, written documentation is now allowed in place of load tickets. Requirements that the materials be uniform, free of contaminants, and not segregated were added. Also added are prohibitions on placing aggregates on frozen, soft, unstable, or rutted surfaces. In subsection 307.03c, density requirements, compaction requirements were added for layer thicknesses of 3 inches or less. Section 308, geotextiles for base. This new section was created by combining the most recently approved versions of the Special Provision for Geotextile Separator and the Special Provision for Geotextile Stabilization. Division 3 made some changes in Division 9 as well. Section 902, Aggregates. An explanation of the changes to this section follows. In subsection 902.02, several ASTM test methods were switched to their AASHTO equivalents. MDOT has decided to specify the AASHTO test where equivalent test methods exist. Michigan Test Method 119, sampling open-graded drainage course compacted in place, was added. Subsection 902.05, dense graded aggregates for base course, surface course, shoulders, approaches, and patching, was numbered as 902.06 in the 2003 book. The restrictions for the use of crushed concrete that were in the frequently used special provision for crushed concrete have been incorporated. Subsection 902.06, open-graded aggregates for earthwork, open-graded drainage courses, and underdrains, was numbered as 902.07 in the 2003 book. The 2G and 3G gradations have been deleted. Crushed concrete is now allowed for the 4G gradation. Subsection 902.07, granular materials for fill and subbase, was numbered as 902.08 in the 2003 book. The restriction on particles 2 inches or larger being within 12 inches of the pipe has been removed. Class 2AA was added as a substitute for Class 2 and 3 materials. Class 1 was added as a substitute for Class 2AA materials. Several changes were made to Table 902-1, which contains the grading requirements for coarse aggregates, dense graded aggregates, and open graded aggregates. Item of work section numbers were changed for 21A and 21AA. 2G and 3G were deleted, while the gradation values for 4G were removed and will now appear in the contract documents. Note G reflects this change. Additionally, in the notes area, A and H were deleted. 2G and 3G were also removed from Table 902-2, physical requirements for coarse aggregates, dense graded aggregates, and open graded aggregates. In Table 902-3, grading requirements for granular materials, a requirement of 50% to 100% passing the number 4 sieve was added to several gradations. In the notes area for this table, Under-drain backfill was removed as an option for Class 2 and Class 2A in Note C. And Note D, which spelled out grading requirements for under-drain backfill, was deleted.